But somehow, survival, the oldest human story, keeps getting harder and more expensive. So how did we get here? How did something as basic as survival turn into a relentless, full-time competition? Let's take a journey from the 1980s to today, across 5 decades of hope, hustle, and heartbreak. To understand how the dream of a better life keeps slipping further and further away, back in the 1980s, survival meant work. Real, physical work. Hands in the soil, sweat on your brow, and long hours that paid the bills just barely. In a city like Seattle, a single adult could get by on about $19,000 a year. That covered rent, groceries, and maybe a small treat on the weekend. Sure, the rich were rich, but the gap didn't feel like an uncrossable chasm. Most people genuinely believed that hard work would eventually pay off. The deal was simple. You trade your time for money. Worked, you survived. But the world was about to change the terms of that deal. Then came the 1990s, and with them, globalization. This new era didn't just bring change, it brought opportunity. Call centers popped up, multinational corporations arrived, and a college degree started to feel like a passport to a better life. For the first time, millions of people saw a ladder they could actually climb. But here's the catch. The ladder didn't have equal rungs for everyone, as the middle class grew, but the poor were still carrying the world's weight, now just under a new, more palatable name, development. The average person was still living paycheck to paycheck. Still, survival had a new scent. It smelled like hope. The system, however, was quietly shifting its gears. Moving from rewarding hard work to rewarding access and connections, the 2000s ushered in the internet, and with it, a brand new dream. Information was supposed to be the great equalizer, or so we were told. For those who could afford computers, education, and a reliable Wi-Fi connection, the world did indeed open up. But for everyone else, it just became harder to keep up. Everyone was busy. Everyone was building something. By the mid-2000s, the cost to live a decent life in Seattle had nearly doubled to $35,000 a year. That's almost twice as expensive as 2 decades earlier. Meanwhile, the top 10% now owned over 63% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom half was left with a meager 3%. The ladders to success were real, but the ground beneath them was starting to shake. Then came the 2010s, the social media decade, a time when being seen became as valuable as being skilled. Followers replaced friendships, startups replaced stability, and going viral replaced the steady climb of getting promoted. The world screamed at us. If you're not growing, you're disappearing. By 2015, just surviving in Seattle cost around $44,000 a year, but the median salary, it barely kept up. The top 10% now held around 68% of America's wealth. The middle class was shrinking, and the rest were drowning not in water, but in rent, debt, and the endless crushing pressure of comparison. Survival now meant staying visible. It wasn't enough to work hard. You had to be relevant. Always. And that brings us to today, the 2020s. AI writes our code. Robots deliver our groceries. Stocks and crypto make some people rich overnight, while millions can't even afford a 1-bedroom apartment. Seattle, a city home to some of the richest companies on the planet, now requires about $64,000 a year for a single adult just to get by. The top 10% control over 70% of the wealth, and the bottom 50%? Still holding on to less than 2%. Technology has created more millionaires than any era before it, but it has also created more people living paycheck to paycheck. The rich learned how to multiply their wealth through ownership, while everyone else was left to rent everything: our homes, our cars, even our time. And yet somehow, we still show up. We adapt. We survive. Because survival isn't just an instinct, it's an act of invention. From dirt roads to digital clouds, the core of the human story hasn't really changed. Only the tools have. Every decade has promised us freedom, but survival keeps reinventing its price tag. Still, we endure. We rebuild. We help each other stand back up. Because maybe true progress isn't about escaping the struggle, but about learning how to survive it together. Survival has never been equal, but it has always been human. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, Please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that explores the world we live in. See you next time.